Okay, part 3 of chapter 10, The Great Climate Warming Hoax. Um, so we were talking about myths. We just knocked a couple out of the park. Let's keep going here. Another great myth the left tries to foist on all of us is the myth that about climate sensitivity. Now, that's a term not everyone knows about, but within the scientific community, it's known quite well. Um, Climate sensitivity is very high, apparently. Um, this is how much the past warming is due to man, how much more warming man will cause, can expect in the future. This all depends on climate sensitivity, which is the temperature response of the Earth to a given amount of radiative forcing, which is caused by a change in either the amount of sunlight absorbed by the Earth or the amount of radiation emitted into space. Supposedly, the part of the myth, we are warming between 0.25 Celsius to 0.5 Celsius every 10 years. And this can be expected as long as we are burning fossil fuels. And here's the truth about that. Climate sensitivity is very, very hard to determine. Global scientists have consistently misinterpreted the atmospheric processes like clouds and precipitation systems, which are critical because they can amplify or reduce the warming itself. So they don't understand those processes, so anything else that they're trying to do is just going to be wrong anyway. Misinterpretation of the year-to-year fluctuations of these systems, the clouds, the precipitation systems, all this stuff, the PDO, maybe, have led to some scientists to believe sensitivity is high. Even satellite evidence shows it is low. Another myth. Consensus science is science. Well, we've already covered this one. A consensus of scientists agree that man-made global warming, that there is man-made global warming, and that will have catastrophic events in the future, or effects to the future. Consensus defines, the truth is that consensus defines a general agreement, but science shouldn't rely on agreements. Trial and error, peer review, healthy skepticism, and an open mind to accept whatever is discovered without bias is the only thing that can ever be called science. Myth. Al Gore's books and movie prove the case of global climate change or global warming. That Earth in the Balance, or as Rush Limbaugh likes to call his book, Earth in the Lurch, and his movie, An Inconvenient Truth, are full of proof and full of examples of that proof. Well, we're going to blow the lid off of that. No less than 9 errors and 26 other exaggerations were found to exist in the movie alone. And it was found by a judge in the United Kingdom and put into court and decided against in court in the UK. Not just some columnist for the Guardian or for the UK whatever saying it. No, it was done by a judge. But the book itself, which came out I think in the 80s, might have been the early 90s, but whatever it was, Earth in the Balance. The main idea of that book was that the automobile was the worst invention man ever did vis-a-vis the environment. He said that the pollution caused by burning of fossil fuels through automobiles made it the most dangerous thing man ever invented. Well, the easy disproof of that, which I did write in my book, is that one volcanic eruption in history, it happened in the 1990s, Mount Pinatubo, which is found in the Philippines, had a massive volcanic eruption. More ozone depleting CO2 greenhouse effect gases were forced into the atmosphere from that one volcanic eruption than all the pollution created by all the cars ever made in history combined. Not making this stuff up, folks. So just how bad could those cars be? One more eruption like Mount Pinatubo, which we've had, or a few of them which would add up to Mount Pinatubo, which we've had, Mauna Loa, Mount St. Helens, you name it, would then put us way ahead of the game with regard to the automobiles. And now, of course, the automobiles don't put out nearly as much garbage as they used to. So how could this be so bad? The Earth itself surely can absorb its own volcanic activity. Way more activity, by the way, than all the stuff that the automobiles ever put out. So how could it not deal with the automobile? See what I'm saying? They give the Earth all this respect in terms of its, needing to be protected and being a living thing, but they can't respect its ability to fight off natural processes that are worse than the things that man even make. Not logical, folks. Myth. Sea levels will rise when Arctic ice melts. I love this one. Okay. Now we're going to get into some real science here. Archimedes had a thing called the law of buoyancy, which is known today as water displacement. Any body completely or partially submerged in a fluid, a gas or a liquid, at rest, is acted upon by an upward or buoyant force of a magnitude of which is equal to the weight of the fluid. That's the law of buoyancy. In other words, a floating object displaces an amount of water equal to its own weight. So the water level remains. In other words, if you have an ice cube in water and it melts, the water level doesn't go up because the weight that was displaced is filled by the amount of the weight of the thing itself. Water to water, gas to gas, gas to water, whatever, any fluid. Now, liberals come back with, but what about the freshwater icebergs in saltwater oceans? Because icebergs are less dense than the salt water. The water would rise, and that is true. Not all icebergs are made from fresh water, but maybe most of them are. Okay. The math says that every cubic kilometer of water, for every cubic kilometer of water, what is a kilometer? About 0.6 something 8 miles. So people who don't know kilometers, they can visualize 2/3 of a mile. Cubic, meaning in width, in height, and in depth. A big cube that is a kilometer in each direction. That is a big freaking chunk of ice. For every cubic kilometer of water, would raise the oceans by 2 0.78 microns. If you don't know what a micron is, it needs a microscope to see it. That's where the word micron comes from. Microscopic. Put another way, it would take 360 cubic kilometers. That's basically the distance from Las Vegas to Los Angeles in 3 dimensions. That much ice to raise the ocean 1 millimeter. What is a millimeter? It's smaller than 1/8 of an inch, folks. This is math. This isn't consensus science. This isn't guesswork. This is math. And the math, there's actual equation. Volume of water on Earth, volume of water of icebergs, this amount, there's an actual physical formula that you can look up online that tells you this information. I wouldn't know how to do it, but it was done for me. Why do I have to do it? I'm researching. I'm not doing the math. I'm just doing the research of the math. So, 1 millimeter rise. Now, imagine, there's a lot of water, a lot of ice cubes, a lot of icebergs, on the planet. Much more than 360 cubic kilometers of it. But 1 millimeter. We're going to get into some more dimensions about that as we go into more myths here. Okay. Now, to finish off this thing, we're going to do things, we're going to kind of combine a few things. It's going to combine the myths versus truths. We're going to combine the blowing up of an Inconvenient Truth, Al Gore's silly-ass, repugnant movie that convinced all the sheeple that man is causing all these problems. And it's going to blow holes, large, fat holes into the whole global warming hoax. And the first of those, basically, I don't know if this is in particular order, but there were 35 problems that the UK court had with An Inconvenient Truth, the movie. And it set aside a lot of time to debunk it, and it did. I'm going to run down, not 35 of them, but almost 35 of them, because this really needs to be hammered home. And I cannot stress strongly enough that this hoax is catastrophic, not in its effect because it's true, but it's catastrophic nature in its effect because it's false. And so it needs to be utterly quashed, this idea. A family member of mine once asked me, shouldn't we just spend all this money and time and energy on global warming or stopping it through, all this the things that we do to do it, just in case we're right about global warming? No, is the answer to that. No, we should not. Because if it's not provable, and we're wasting our money. We already do, because of the EPA, because of a bunch of other stuff, we already do a lot. And we do a lot more than any other country. If the other countries aren't doing anything we do is a waste of time anyway. But that's aside from the point. We're doing what we can. We're doing it slowly and surely, sure-footedly. When it makes sense. The way anything should be done. Not just in case we're right. Not, we can't, we can't predict the weather next week. How are we going to predict it in 50 years or 100 years? The sophistry of the left knows no bounds. So Al Gore's movie, all granted, it's now quite a few years old, but they're still using it as the model for everything we do. It needs to be utterly debunked and destroyed for the piece of crap that it is. So I'm not going to miss a beat here. I'm going to hit them all. So bear with me. lie number one of multiple lies. Sea levels will rise. This is what's in the book now, not just the overall general myth of global warming or global climate change or what the hell else. This is actually in the book. Sea levels will rise 6 meters, 20.22 feet for those incapable of doing the conversion. Because of, in the future, at some point, because of global warming. They give no date when this is going to happen in the book or in the movie, but they show current populations being affected, so one assumes that they believe it's going to happen soon, now. Why else give current populations instead of future populations? Even the IPCC, remember that's the International Panel on Climate Change, says it's a UN organization, of course. Even the IPCC says it could take several millennia. If Gore's West Antarctica and Greenland ice sheets melt, the result would be actually 6 centimeters, not meters, 2.5 inches. That's if they melt, and we'll talk about why they won't melt or why they may not do what they say is going to happen down the road here. But that was one of his contentions about sea levels rising. But even if they do, the IPCC, no other than they, say 6 centimeters. The exaggeration between the 6 centimeters and the 6 meters, 10,000%. Only a minor exaggeration on Al Gore's part. Lie number 2. Pacific Islands are drowning. Coral atolls created by coral, grow at 10 times the rate of increase of the sea level. They're 10 times faster than the sea level can rise. So they would be well above water and are often well above water. In fact, there's a reason, it's not a coincidence why coral atolls are specifically a few feet above the level of sea, because they grow in response to the sea levels. So they can't ever be underwater, is the point. Another part of this lie is 150 million refugees have had to bolt out of certain islands due to constant coastal flooding, shoreline erosion, or agricultural disruption. But it couldn't have happened because of that, because even the projected sea level rise of 1 foot by 2050 cannot cause erosion on a coral atoll, because it grows. It's a plant. It's an animal. It's not a plant. It's whatever the hell it is. What is a coral? Anyway, I think it's an animal. Maybe it's a plant. Doesn't matter. It grows. So it can't have the erosion they're talking about. So these refugees left for other reasons. Most of it was because of the agricultural disruption that they themselves caused. And there's certain other political reasons. But they decided that the ignorant wouldn't know the difference. We'll go to lie number 3 and hopefully all the rest of them on part 4 of our global warming hoax videos. See you then.